The fire wasn't the only thing smoldering that night. He reached into the hearth, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the glow of the flames catching on his forearms. I stood behind him too close enough to feel the radiant heat of the fire. And the heat rising inside me. Let me back up. This isn't something I ever meant to happen. I'm not that kind of woman. I've never crossed a line like this. But that night something shifted. And once it did, there was no going back. His name is Joel. He moved in 2 houses down last spring. Bought the old craftsman with the overgrown garden. My husband Dan didn't like him from the beginning. Said he was arrogant. Too charming. The type who knew he looked good splitting firewood in a flannel shirt. And he wasn't wrong. But I didn't pay attention. Not really. I was polite when we passed in the street, casual in the way women are taught to be, warm but not inviting, smiling without suggesting anything. Until that night. It was just supposed to be a quick favor. Dan was out of town for work. The pilot light in the fireplace had gone out again, and I didn't feel comfortable relighting it myself. Joel saw me struggling with the old grate from across the yard and offered to help. I told myself it would be 5 minutes. 10 at most. But time stretches when you're standing in a dim living room with a man you shouldn't be watching the way I watched him. He knelt down in front of the hearth, coaxing the flame back to life. His voice was low, rough around the edges as he explained what he was doing. I nodded, but I wasn't listening. I was distracted by the shape of his hands, the way his shoulders filled out his shirt, how the light flickered over the curve of his neck. I should have stepped back, given him space. But I didn't. I stayed close. Too close. My breath hitched when he turned his head slightly, his cheek catching the light, eyes glancing up toward me. It should catch in a second, he said, his voice low. I nodded. Swallowed. Said nothing. The fire roared softly to life, sending a warm flicker of orange dancing up the chimney. Joel stood, brushing his hands off on his jeans. There, he said. All set. But he didn't move. And neither did I. We stood there in the quiet, the fire cracking behind us, its golden light licking at the walls. His eyes flicked to my mouth just for a second. Just for a second. I could have thanked him. I could have walked away. Instead, I asked the question I shouldn't have asked. Do you want to stay for a drink? He hesitated just for a heartbeat, but then he nodded. Yeah, he said. Sure. I turned before he could see the flush climbing up my neck and walked toward the kitchen, trying to remember how to breathe like a normal person. My hand shook slightly as I opened the cupboard. The glasses clinked louder than they should have, giving me away. I cursed under my breath and tried to steady myself. This wasn't a date. It wasn't even a flirtation. It was a neighborly gesture. That's what I told myself even as I picked the good bourbon, the one I usually save for anniversaries or long, lonely nights. He leaned against the doorway when I turned around. Arms crossed, body relaxed, eyes tracing the room. Not me. Not at first. But when our eyes met, it was like something shifted in the air between us. Like the quiet had its own kind of weight. I handed him a glass, careful not to touch his fingers. Too careful. He noticed. You all right? He asked, tilting his head. I smiled too quickly. Yeah. Just tired. Long day. I nodded, sipping to cover my silence. The bourbon burned going down, but I welcomed it. I needed something to anchor me. Because Joel wasn't doing anything. He wasn't leaning in, wasn't flirting. But he didn't need to. The way he stood there, solid, warm, grounded, it stirred something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. We sat on the couch, the fire popping gently. I tucked my legs under me, clutching my glass like a shield. The light flickered over his jaw, his throat, the soft curve of his mouth. I tried not to look, but every time I glanced away, I wanted to glance back. He asked about Dan. Casual. Friendly. I told him he'd flown out to Phoenix, something about a supplier meeting. Joel nodded, sipping slowly like he already knew. Small town. Word gets around. Silence slipped in again, not awkward but charged. Like the space between us was holding its breath. Then he asked me something that shouldn't have caught me off guard. Are you happy? I froze. It wasn't the question itself, it was the way he asked it. Not nosy. Not flirtatious. Just honest. Deep. Like he'd seen something in me I hadn't meant to show. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. I blinked down at the fire instead, the orange light soft against my bare ankles, the hem of my sweater grazing my thighs. I don't know, I said finally. I think I used to be. He didn't say anything right away. Just watched me. Really watched me. Not with judgment, just quiet understanding. That's a hard place to be, he said. The in-between. My throat tightened. I should have told him to leave. Should have laughed it off. Should have reminded myself that this was wrong, that Dan was my husband, that this wasn't how good stories start. But when Joel reached forward, just slightly, to set his glass on the table, his hand brushed against my knee. Light. Accidental. But the shock of it sent a ripple through me. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And neither did he. His hand hovered for a moment too long. Then slowly, deliberately he pulled it back. But the imprint stayed. On my skin. In my chest. Everywhere. I looked up at him and he was already looking at me. My heart beat too loudly. And then he said it low and steady. I should go. But he didn't stand. He said he should go. And maybe he meant it. But he didn't stand. Didn't make any move toward the door. He just looked at me like there was something hanging in the air he didn't want to break. Felt it too. That hum between us. That unbearable closeness of something not yet acted on. I swallowed hard. You don't have to, I whispered, barely audible over the soft crackle of the fire. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a surrender. His eyes dropped to my lips again, and this time he didn't look away. Joel leaned back slowly, as if giving me space to take it back. I didn't. My breath came shallow, my fingers tightening around the edge of the cushion like I needed something to hold on to. I don't want to make things complicated, he said. I nodded, but I didn't move. They already are. Silence fell again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything we weren't saying. Every choice, every possibility. Every heartbeat that felt just a little too loud in the stillness. He leaned forward just slightly, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. You ever think about what it would feel like to just let go? I blinked. My mouth was suddenly dry. Let go of what? Control. Guilt. The weight of being good. His voice was deeper now, more quiet, like he was confessing something. Or inviting me to. I looked at him, at the way the firelight danced in his eyes, the way he studied me without flinching, like he wanted to memorize every flicker of hesitation on my face. I had spent years being careful. Tidy. Proper. Dan liked things in their place. Dinners on time, shirts ironed, smiles just bright enough to keep the peace. I had become an expert at swallowing things down. But Joel didn't want the polished version of me. He was watching the cracks. And somehow that made me want to break. I think about it, I said, voice barely above a whisper. More than I should. He nodded slowly, like he understood something I hadn't even fully admitted to myself. Then he reached up, just one hand, slow and deliberate, and brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek. His fingers lingered, feather-light against my skin. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. It was the gentlest touch I'd felt in years. And then, almost imperceptibly, he leaned closer. His face was inches from mine. The space between us tightened, thick with heat and hesitation. I could feel the warmth of his breath on my lips. Could see the exact moment he paused, giving me a choice. Say no and it would stop. Say nothing and it wouldn't. And I said nothing. That silence that held breath between us was the loudest moment of my life. His lips hovered a breath away, waiting. And mine? They didn't move. They didn't have to. My stillness said it all. I didn't stop him. When he kissed me, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't hungry or reckless. It was reverent. Soft. The kind of kiss that felt like a question, one I answered not with words, but with the way I leaned into him. His hand slipped around the side of my neck, fingers warm, anchoring me. My whole body tensed, then softened like it had been waiting for this, for someone to touch me like I was more than just something functional. When he pulled back, barely an inch, his eyes searched mine. Tell me to stop, he said, voice raw. I couldn't. Because in that moment I didn't want to be the woman who always did the right thing. I wanted to feel. To be seen. To be wanted without conditions or explanations. I pressed my forehead to his and whispered, "Don't." That was all he needed. The second kiss was deeper, more urgent. My hand found the side of his shirt. clinging without thinking. I felt the tension in his chest, the slow exhale he let out against my mouth, like even he didn't expect this to happen. Like he'd imagined it maybe but never thought I'd let it go this far. Neither did I. His touch wasn't greedy, it was measured, reverent, like every inch of my skin was something sacred. His hands moved carefully like he wanted to memorize, not take. And it undid me. The way his thumb traced my collarbone. The way my sweater slipped slightly off one shoulder, baring skin to the fire's glow. The way I trembled, not from fear but from something deeper. From being known. "You're shaking," he whispered, brushing his lips against the side of my neck. "I know," I whispered back. He pulled away just enough to look at me, really look. His expression was careful, protective even. Like he was holding something fragile. "You okay?" And I nodded because I was. For the first time in years I was okay. But the moment stretched and with it the tension in my chest. Because I wasn't just cheating on my husband. I was rediscovering a part of myself I had long buried. A version of me who wanted. Who reached. Who felt. I should have stopped. I should have made him leave. Instead, I traced the edge of his jaw with my fingertip and whispered, "Stay." His eyes darkened. And he did. But neither of us knew what it would cost. The room was quiet except for the fire and the unspoken things between us. Joel stayed. Not with loud declarations or shameless advances, but with the quiet certainty of a man who knew this moment meant something. We didn't rush toward anything, there was too much weight in the air for that. Every move felt like stepping further into something we wouldn't come back from. He sat closer now. Not touching but close enough that our knees brushed. Close enough to feel the heat pulsing between us like some invisible tether. My sweater had slipped low on one shoulder, but I didn't pull it up. His eyes noticed. I let them. "I don't want to be just another mistake," he said suddenly, voice barely above the flicker of flame. That stopped me. I turned to him. "You think that's what this is?" "I think I've imagined it," he said. "More times than I should." That admission, the quiet gravity of it, struck something deep in me. He hadn't pursued. Hadn't pushed. But now I knew he'd thought about this. About me. And not just in passing. There was something dangerous about that kind of honesty. And something intoxicating. My hand found his wrist without thinking. His skin was warm under my touch, pulse strong and steady. But his breath caught. And then I ruined everything. Because I wasn't thinking. Because my mouth moved faster than my heart. Because guilt does strange things when you're right on the edge of surrender. I said a name. But it wasn't his. I said hers. "Clara," I whispered. Joel froze. I hadn't meant to say it. I don't even know why I did. Maybe because she'd been in the back of my mind the entire time. Maybe because the only person who ever made me feel this unraveled before was her. He pulled back just slightly, brows narrowing. Not with anger, but with confusion. "Clara," he echoed. I could have lied. Should have. But something in me cracked open. She was my friend. Years ago. My voice shook. Before Dan. Before I knew what I wanted. Joel didn't speak. Just watched me listening. "We kissed once," I confessed. She made me feel things I wasn't supposed to. I buried it. Married the man I was supposed to want. I haven't spoken to her in 6 years. The fire popped, the room holding its breath. "I don't know why I said her name," I added. "I'm sorry." But Joel didn't pull away. He touched my cheek with a tenderness I didn't expect. Like he understood that this was bigger than both of us. More than attraction. More than infidelity. This was about waking up. "You don't have to apologize," he said softly. "Sometimes the things we bury don't stay buried." I nodded, my throat tight. Then, after a long, quiet pause, he asked the question that unraveled me completely. "Did she make you feel the way I make you feel right now?" And I couldn't answer. 'Cause I didn't know. Because no one ever had. Not like this. The question hung between us like smoke, thick, unbreathable, lingering. Did she make you feel the way I make you feel right now? It wasn't about Clara. Not really. It was about me. About whether I could even name what I was feeling. Desire? Guilt? Longing so sharp it left a bruise? I couldn't answer him. So instead I did what I always do when I'm afraid of the truth. I reached for something physical, something real. My fingers slid down his wrist, tracing the veins beneath his skin. I leaned in until my forehead touched his shoulder, just to feel the shape of him. He didn't move, didn't speak. His stillness felt like an invitation. And a warning. We sat like that for a moment, his body still, mine trembling, before his hand found the small of my back, a steadying pressure that sent heat straight through me. "We don't have to do anything," he whispered. But that was the lie we both wanted to believe. Because everything was already happening. The fire crackled behind us, and I became hyper-aware of everything. The rise and fall of his chest. The scent of cedar and soap clinging to his clothes. The weight of what we were about to do. When he kissed me again, it wasn't slow this time. It was quiet, yes, but desperate. Controlled, but only barely. A kiss that said, "If we start this, we won't stop." I kissed him back. Harder. My hand slid under his shirt, not even for the touch. Just to feel the warmth of his skin, to remind myself he was real. He made a sound in his throat, low, almost like a growl, but he pulled back before it got away from us. Barely. "Are you sure?" he asked, breathing hard. "Because if you're not..." "I'm sure," I said before he could finish, but my voice cracked. He touched his forehead to mine, eyes closed, jaw tight. "I don't want to be a secret you regret." I almost cried at that. Because it wasn't about regret, it was about being seen. About someone holding the parts of me I kept hidden even from myself. We moved from the couch without speaking, the fire our only witness. My hand in his. The silence between us thick with everything unsaid. When he laid me back, he didn't rush. Every movement was measured. Every touch like a question he already knew the answer to. It wasn't rough. It wasn't even wild. It was honest. And that made it feel forbidden in a way nothing else could. When he kissed the inside of my wrist, his breath soft against my skin, I realized something that made my heart ache. I didn't want this to end. Not tonight. Not ever. And that terrified me more than anything. I didn't sleep. Even after everything, after his hands, his breath, his warmth curling around mine. I lay there in the faint glow of the fireplace, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it could offer an answer. Joel was asleep beside me. Calm. Breathing slow and steady. And I hated how safe I felt next to him. Because the sun would rise soon. And it would ruin everything. His arm was draped across my waist, fingers resting against the curve of my hip like they belonged there. I wanted to close my eyes and believe in that fantasy. That I could stay in this moment, in this room, in this borrowed softness that didn't belong to me. But reality was already knocking. My phone buzzed just once on the table across the room. I didn't have to look. I knew it was Dan. Checking in from the airport. Or maybe from a layover somewhere. He always texted at dawn. I didn't move. I just lay there, trapped between two versions of myself. The one who would get up, clean the glasses, put everything back in its place and pretend none of this happened. And the one still wrapped in Joel's scent, his warmth, the ghost of his mouth on my collarbone. He stirred, just barely, and his voice came low and groggy. "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. 'Cause I wasn't sure. Finally I whispered, "I should get up." His arm tightened around me. "You don't have to." But I did. I had to. Because this wasn't a new life. It was a moment stolen from the one I already had. I slipped out from under his arm, feeling the cold air like punishment as it hit my skin. My sweater was still on the floor, half forgotten. I pulled it over my head slowly, almost reverently, like I was covering something sacred. Joel sat up watching me. His eyes were gentle, but not apologetic. "Do you regret it?" he asked. I turned to him, heart pounding. "No," I said. And I meant it. But I didn't add what came next in my head. "I regret everything else." He stood and came to me, barefoot, bare-chested, radiating warmth I didn't want to lose. His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing the place just under my eye where the guilt had already started to settle. "Tell me this meant something," he said, voice low. "It did," I said. "Too much." We kissed again, this time slow, aching like we both knew it might be the last. And then I said the thing I hadn't planned to. The thing that scared me even more than last night's surrender. "I think I'm falling." His expression changed just for a second. A flicker of something real. Not lust. Not pride. Feeling. "Then let me catch you," he said. But I wasn't ready. I stepped back, heart in my throat. Not yet. He nodded. No anger. No pleading. Just understanding. But I knew what I left behind when I walked to the door. And it wasn't just a man in my living room. It was the version of myself I was afraid to become. The morning air felt too sharp, too clean. Like it was trying to wash away the night before. But no matter how many showers I took, how many times I changed the sheets or opened windows to let the house breathe, I still felt him. Not just his touch. His presence. His voice in my head. His hand at the small of my back. The way he looked at me, not like I was someone's wife, not like I was someone's mistake, but like I was mine. My own. Dan got home late that night. He kissed my cheek like always. Asked about the heat. I said the fireplace was working fine now. Nothing else. I didn't tell him about the bourbon glasses. Or the way Joel's scent had clung to the couch cushion I had flipped over and over until I couldn't smell it anymore. But I couldn't get rid of it in my head. I tried. God, I tried. I threw myself into routines. Grocery lists. Emails. Vacuum lines on the carpet that made everything look normal again. But inside I was vibrating with something I couldn't name. Joel didn't reach out. Not right away. He gave me space. Which somehow made it worse. Because I kept thinking, what if he had? What if he'd knocked on my door that next evening, said he couldn't stop thinking about me? Would I have opened it? Yes. And that terrified me. Because I wasn't just betraying a man. I was betraying an entire version of myself. The one who played by the rules, who smiled when she was supposed to, who loved safety more than fire. And now? I craved the burn. Weeks passed. I avoided the street when I could. Took the long way around the neighborhood. But one afternoon I saw him again. By accident. He was in his yard. Chopping wood. Sweat on his neck. Shirt half clinging to him. That same quiet focus that had drawn me in before. Our eyes met. Just for a second. He didn't smile. Neither did I. Because there was too much between us now. A silence so full it could swallow us both. But in that look I felt it all again. The fire, the ache, the honesty. And the possibility I hadn't let myself believe in. So I did something reckless. That night, after Dan fell asleep, I sat alone by the fireplace. The same one Joel had lit. I ran my fingers along the edge of the hearth, remembering how close we'd stood. Remembering how everything changed in that heat. And then I picked up my phone. One message. That's all. Not a confession. Not a plea. Just one line. I'm still burning. And I hit send. If you've made it this far, thank you. This wasn't easy to share. But maybe you've been there too, in that moment where temptation meets truth, where the safest choice is no longer the one you want. If you felt something in this story, if it stirred something in you, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Because sometimes, the ones we never talk about are the ones that change us the most.